Hart is located in Emmett County, in Redmond Township, southwest of Mackinac City, north of Petoskey, and on the Lake Michigan shoreline, looking out at Beaver Island. It's also located on the Tunnel of Trees, scenic heritage route. The area is breathtaking. The Robison family were planning on spending their entire summer with their 4 children at their summer cottage. However, something sinister happened here in the summer of 1968. It will turn out to be the worst mass murder in the history of Michigan. Robert was 42 years old, and was a successful advertising executive. He owned his own magazine called Impresario. Shirley Robison, his wife, was a 40-year-old homemaker. The children were brought up in a stable and privileged life. Just a few weeks into their stay at their cottage, things would take a tragic turn. On June 25, 1968, someone began shooting into the window of the cottage. The first to be shot was Richard Robison. He was shot 5 times, through the rear window, from a .25 caliber, semi-automatic rifle. The killer then gained entry to their cottage, by an unlocked door, and shot the rest of the family, with the same weapon. All sustained gunshot wounds to the head. Richard and Susan, his young daughter, were bludgeoned with a hammer, that was later found at the scene of the crime. Neighbors in the area complained about a rancid smell, and called on Chauncey Bliss to find the source of the odor. Chauncey was the caretaker of the area, and also had built the cabins in the area. Bliss thought maybe there was a dead raccoon, or some other animal, and started looking around and discovered the whole family had been murdered. Shirley Robison's body was staged intentionally, so that when discovered, would make the crime appear to be sexually motivated. The bodies were found inside the cottage. Shirley, age 40, was found lying on her stomach, on the floor, in the southeast area of the living room. A plaid blanket covered her body, except for below her knees. She was shot once in the head. In the first autopsy, a .25 caliber slug was removed from her body. Robert, age 42, was found lying on the floor, in the hallway, over a heating and cooling register. He was shot once in the head. During the first autopsy, a .25 caliber slug was found. A .22 caliber slug was later pulled from his chest, in the second autopsy, which investigators believe was the first shot. Richard, age 19, was found halfway in the bedroom, and halfway in the hallway. His legs were in the hallway. He had multiple .25 caliber slugs pulled from his head. Gary, age 16, was lying on his back, at the east wall of the northeast bedroom. He had 2 .22 caliber slugs pulled from his head. The second autopsy also found a .22 slug in his back. Randall, age 12, was found lying on top of his father. The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. No slugs were found during the autopsy. Susan, age 7, was found on her back in the hallway. She is laying sound of her father. A .25 caliber slug was recovered from her clothing. She received a gunshot wound to the face. She also had a skull fracture, by the claw hammer found at the scene. Investigators determined that the perpetrator had shot through the window with a rifle, killing Robert and one of his sons. Then made entry through the unlocked door and chased the others down one by one. Then, he closed the curtains, locked the door, turned up the heat, and attempted to cover the bullet holes in the window with cardboard. The crime lab determined that the 2 guns connected to the killings were a .25 caliber Beretta automatic pistol and an uncommon, .22 caliber, Armalite AR-7 rifle. Evidence at the scene proved that only one perpetrator was responsible for this horrific crime. The bodies were not found for 27 days, which resulted in advanced decomposition of the bodies. The first autopsies were done at the Emmett County Fairgrounds due to the advanced state of the bodies. Later, in November of 1968, the bodies were exhumed for a second autopsy to check for more evidence. The state police detectives almost immediately zeroed in on Joseph Scolaro, an employee of Richard Robison. While Richard was traveling this summer, and spending time with his family, he left Scolaro running the business. On the morning of the murders, Robison had talked to his banker, and discovered that a lot of money was missing from his account. He immediately called his office, and the receptionist recalled. Robison was furious. He demanded to talk to Scolaro, looking to find out what happened to the missing funds. The receptionist later tells investigators that after some shouting, Scolaro left the office at around 10:30 a.m. He was not able to account for where he was from the time he left the office until 11 p.m. that night, when he finally arrived back home. During an interview, Scolaro's wife told detectives that this was the first time in their entire time of being married that her husband had not turned up for dinner, or at least called. He had no alibi for the 12 hours he was missing. 2 of the 4 firearms believed to be used in the murders were almost immediately tied to Scolaro. Later on in the investigation, shell casings found at the scene of the crime were matched to shell casings found at a firing range. Eyewitnesses seen Scolaro shoot an AR-7 rifle that is believed to be used in the murders. It was documented by investigators that one of the actual few Sacco ammunition purchasers in Michigan had been Joseph Scolaro III, on February 2, 1968. Scolaro claimed that he had given away both weapons prior to the murders. Investigators also found that Scolaro had recently given himself a large raise and bumped to his expense account and given other employees raises without Robison's knowledge. He also was writing on pre-signed checks, larger than normal amounts, in the weeks before the murders. Scolaro had been to the remote cabin before. He was one of the very few people that knew how to find it. Scolaro could not explain away any of the evidence against him. Scolaro also was under the impression that a $200,000 key man life insurance policy had been taken out on his boss, but he didn't realize that it was not in effect just yet, due to Robison not taking the required physical just yet. A key man life insurance basically is a life insurance policy taken out in a business on the key employee. The company pays the premiums, and if that person dies unexpectedly, the company receives the insurance payoff. Investigators believe that Scolaro drove from Detroit to Robison's cabin, killed the entire family, to silence anyone from finding out about him embezzling the money. Then drove back. Scolaro was given 3 lie detector tests. He failed 2, and 1 was inconclusive. Due to budget cuts from the local officials, they refused to allow this to go to court. It took 4 long years, and eventually under new authority, police were finally ready to apprehend him. But he would never see a jail cell. He wrote out a suicide note, claiming he was innocent and then shot himself in the head. During the lengthy murder investigation, it was determined by a forensic accountant that more than $60,000 was missing from the 2 combined businesses of Richard Robison. Because the family's bodies remained in the home in advanced decomposition for so long, the beautiful little cottage had to be demolished due to the odor. For 5 decades, the land where the Robison cottage once stood has been vacant. After the murders, a family purchased the property and kept it untouched, almost as though it was a memorial. That's perhaps soon going to change since the property recently went on the market. The listing cost for the 1-acre waterfront property is $425,000. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like and share.